Hello, all, and welcome to our session today. We're going to be looking into boosting your form efficiency, and we're going to be doing that with the power of Prefill. Can't wait to show you some of the options that are available to you for bringing information that you've already got in other systems into your forms, making user experience easier and improving the quality of your data. But don't let me ruin the surprise of the information we're going to get to today. My name is Josh Straley. If you've been to our webinars before, you should recognize me. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started today. If you've been to a webinar, this will sound familiar, but you are in our On24 platform. It's configurable and customizable to you, but if you have left it the way I set it up for you, you should be seeing something similar to what you see on your screen here. We do have our slides. We have our video. We also have two sections I'd like to highlight for you today. You have your Q&A box where you can communicate with me and ask your questions for our question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions during the call, go ahead and put them into that box. I'll respond to them as I can. The number one question I always get is, will today's session be recorded? It will be. It is currently, and we'll be sending that around to your inbox that you use to register for this webinar in around 24 hours. So take a look at, tomorrow afternoon, and we should have that link for you, and you'll be able to rewatch or share today's session with colleagues. The second area I'd like to draw your attention to is our resources section. Along with the presentation that you'll see today, we do have some help documentation available for you, so you can, step by step walk through pre-filling with workflows, setting up workflows in your own account. I encourage you to take a look at that. If you are wondering how to take single forms and turn them into workflows, I also have an ebook that's available for you to read there. You can access that from the resources section. And last but not least, we have a special treat for our customers today. We have a VIP program here at Form Assembly that gets you access to a Slack group where you can network with other Form Assembly users, ask them about use cases, get some advice, etc. And we host special coffees with subject matter expert sessions for the VIP group. They're a little more intimate than our webinars, usually a bit smaller as far as attendees. We open up the chat so you can chat amongst each other and network again. And we're having one just next week that Joelle is hosting, and you can register today. We're opening up registrations to the rest of our audience today. Go ahead and register for that, and you can see what the VIP sessions are like. If you enjoy our webinars, I think you'll enjoy those sessions, so I encourage you to register. Before we get started today, I do have a quick poll, and it's around how you are using pre-filling currently. I have some options. Please click your screen, choosing the selection that closely fits how you are pre-filling today. And if you're not pre-filling, I bet you wish you were, because you came to this webinar to learn more about it. That option is available to you as well. I'll give you about, let's say, 20 seconds. If you don't mind clicking on your screen, I'll be able to see as you submit, and we'll get a sense of what the audience is doing. Joelle, any guesses on what we're thinking today on what they're doing?
I'm suspecting the Salesforce Prefill connector, because I love that one, but there's also so many other ways to prefill that I feel like just sometimes get overlooked. So I'm excited to share with you guys all the ways you can prefill today, but I'm thinking probably Salesforce Prefill connector.
Not to be contrary, I'm going to guess through the URL just because I've heard so many people build processes with that. But we'll find out. We'll find out the winner. I'm going to give, let's say, 3 more seconds, and then we're going to take a look at our results. Sorry if I cut you off. Oh, Joelle wins. Of course. I mean, you know how people use the product even better than I do.
Yes.
Great. Looks like over half of you are using our Salesforce Prefill connector. We know that is super popular. It is a very powerful aspect of Form Assembly, a reason that a lot of people actually come to our product. Through the URL is an oldie but goodie. And then it looks like a significant portion of you are not pre-filling yet. And we're going to get you the information, perhaps, that you need to be able to pre-fill going forward. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Joelle and for today's presentation. Joelle, good morning, and take it away.
Good morning. Thank you, Josh. So yes, as you mentioned, my name is Joelle Swanson. I'm the product trainer here at Form Assembly. Probably part of why I was so so able to accurately guess what you guys are using is because I started out in support, helping customers just like you guys. And then now, as a product trainer, I'm able to come in, help train our customers, our employees on just all the ways they can use form assembly. And that is kind of my passion, is just helping everyone. So let's get into what we're talking about today. So I'm just so excited to show you guys how you can streamline your processes and boost efficiency by integrating your prefill connectors and prefill methods into your existing forms and workflows. So in this webinar, we'll go over just what is prefilling. We'll define it, we'll go over why it's such a powerful feature, and then get into the prefilling methods you can use in workflow. These are just like a quick touch on what methods are available to you before we dive into the demo. And with this demo, I'll guide you through a live demo of setting up and adding each of these different prefill methods to your workflow. And then we'll just have a quick recap of those prefilling methods in workflow, making sure everything is clear to you guys before we go to questions, and you guys can ask anything and everything that you guys want to know. So we got a lot to cover today. Let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. What is prefilling? At its core, prefilling allows you to automatically populate fields in your form with data before the respondent even opens the form. This means that when you send or publish a form, certain fields can already be filled out based on information you've gathered or that's available to you from other sources. Now, what does this mean for you as a form builder or administrator? Let's kind of break it down into four main categories, That's going to be a seamless user experience, backend data integration, faster data entry and reduced errors, and personalization at scale. So with that seamless user experience, one of the biggest advantages is that it improves experience for your respondents by automatically filling in fields such as name, email, or any other information you've collected from them. You reduce the need for respondents to re-enter data they've already provided. This not only saves them time, but it also makes them feel that the form is personalized and relevant to them. For example, if you're sending out a registration form and you've already collected someone's name, address, all of that information through a previous interaction, you can pre-fill that information for them into the registration form. This small convenience often leads to higher form completion rates. And then backend integration. This is just allows you to have those extra steps in your forms to really smooth out any of those things that you need to do, such as giving you an idea of where the respondent accessed the form. For example, did they click on a link in an email? Did they access it through social media or some other method? You can use prefilling to tell you that information so you can collect that data for your own needs. You can also have custom fields based on your respondents' data so that you can make sure, like if you're using these forms internally for like a sales team, your team has the right contacts and right information to do their jobs effectively or follow up as they need to. And then faster data entry and reduced errors. Prefilling really allows you to just have all of that information in the accurate format that you have in your system, integrations, wherever, into the form, so your customers or respondents don't have to worry about entering in their information where it might be incomplete or incorrect. You're making sure that information is right from the get-go. And then I touched lightly on this, that personalization at scale. It's really a key thing to make your respondents feel seen, noticed. And when you're working with large groups of respondents or small, that personalization can often feel like a daunting task to just go in and just do all those little steps. But prefilling, you can add that personalization at scale. Whether you're sending out a survey, registration form, or application, you can ensure that each individual form automatically feels more relevant to each person or respondent, enhancing their overall user experience. Prefilling essentially is all about reducing friction, whether it's making life easier for your respondents by automatically filling in data, or helping you collect more accurate and insightful information through backend integrations. Prefilling helps streamline the entire process, both for you and your respondents. So let's get into some of those prefilling methods and workflow. As I mentioned, we're just going to lightly touch on them before we dive into the demo. But those ones that we're going to be talking about today are Prefill through the workflow URL, the Salesforce Prefill connector, and form-to-form prefilling. So let's dive into the demo. Before I share my screen, let me kind of set the scene for you guys. For today's demo, I'm going to take several existing forms that I'm already using in other contexts and combine them into a single workflow. These forms include a submit a support ticket form, a register for a webinar form, and a submit feedback form. The reason I'm combining these forms into one workflow is that I've observed a pattern with our customers. After submitting a support ticket, many of them are interested in signing up for upcoming webinars or submitting feedback related to their ticket. By consolidating these forms into one streamlined workflow, I can ensure that my data stays consistent and accurate for these customers, while also making the process easier for them by taking advantage of prefilling to automatically populate the forms with the necessary data and pull in any additional information needed. So give me just a second now to share my screen, and we can see that workflow. There we go. It took a minute to get there. So here's that workflow. I've added in those 3 forms, that support ticket, feedback, and register for webinars. And I've got them imported. I imported their submit connectors too, so they're already all set up. I just need to go ahead and set up those prefill options to tie them together and to ease my respondent's journey through this workflow. So the first thing I want to talk about today is prefilling through the URL. With this method, it allows you to enter static information into the link to the form or workflow that will be prefilled. This is extremely useful if you want to record how a respondent accessed your information, if you want to know if there's an associated campaign with the form or workflow, or really any other static information that you want prefilled into the form. Now, when you go to prefill through the URL with workflow, you might try clicking this view button. And when you click that view button, you see this very long link. You can still use prefill through the URL using that link. I find that definitely harder than it needs to be. So how I like to prefill through the URL with workflow is actually going to this publishing options page, and I'll copy this workflow URL. This workflow URL is a direct link to my workflow. So I can take that and paste it in here and get redirected to my same workflow. You can kind of see it's that start of that workflow. But before I finish and go to the workflow, I need to get the field that I want to be pre-filled. Now with my workflow, you can see I have that first form, submit a support ticket. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that submit a support ticket form in my form builder. And we can see this form here. And I'm going to find the field that I want to be pre-filled. And that's going to be the source of ticket, this field right here. And I just need to get that field alias. So that's going to be TFA 1879. And I can add that to the end of my workflow link. Underscore 1879 equals, and then any of that data that I want to be pre-filled into my form. As I mentioned, this is going to be kind of embedded across multiple sources where my respondents can access, such as websites, social media, direct links I send out, or somewhere else. I can enter into this link exactly where I'm posting this workflow so I can know where my respondents are accessing it. So let's just say we're accessing it through the website. That pre-filled link is ready to go. So I'm just going to click enter, and we get redirected to the workflow, and we can see that pre-filled field. You can see it also appends with that very long link, and the pre-filling through the URL is in there. That just makes it easier for me, and I really appreciate that. But we can also come back in here and see it working differently again. So if I want to pre-fill something else in there, all I have to do is just enter in the field alias again, equals, let's do direct this time. When I click enter, we can see that pre-filled field is different. And this really works with any static information that you want to send into your workflows based off of any information that you want there for any backend processes. Is usually how I would use that prefill through the URL. Next, let's take a look at the Salesforce Prefill connector. The Salesforce Prefill connector allows you to pull data directly from Salesforce and prefill forms in your workflow. This is especially useful if you're working with customer or lead data or any other records in Salesforce by integrating Salesforce with your forms. You can automatically pre-populate those fields like name, email, account information, any custom fields you have, and ensure your forms are always up to date with the latest information. Now, in workflow, there's actually two separate ways you can use a Salesforce Prefill connector. The first method is by starting the workflow with a Salesforce Prefill connector, and this will pull data directly into your workflow as soon as it's open and into that first form. The second option is to place the Salesforce Prefill connector later in your workflow. This is where it can pull data from a previous form submission into the Prefill connector and use that information to prefill subsequent fields and also pull in new data from Salesforce. So let's start out with looking at starting the workflow with a Salesforce Prefill connector. For my workflow, I just want to have the dedicated prefilled links for my top customers so that they can quickly submit their support tickets and have all of their information already in the field. So it'll be that submit a support ticket, and I'll add a Salesforce Prefill connector to that first. So I'll just go ahead and click that blue button, connector. And then from here, I will click on configure. I've got the form already. I'll select the Salesforce Prefill connector, and this will give me the option to configure the connector. Does that show? No, it is not showing. Let me see if I can get that. It's not giving me. Okay, on 24, why are you not working with me to show this new screen?
I do think that its screen sharing limitations sometimes do not show pop-ups, which is what we're not seeing.
Yes. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen for a moment. I'll share the pop-up, and then I'll stop sharing again, and then go back to here. We'll have to do that quite a few times, just because we also need to see the link, unfortunately.
It should, you may, if you share your entire screen, Joelle, it won't be quite as clean as your Chrome browser sharing, but it should show both the pop-ups.
Okay, yes, that is true. You'll see a little bit of like the infinity screen for just a minute as I'm going through. Hopefully it'll go away soon. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now I can click configure connector and have it actually shown to you guys. So once I'm here, I can then select the Salesforce account that I want to use. If you don't have this already in your account, you can just click to connect to a different account and then connect to your Salesforce from there. So, well, that is loading. This sometimes can take a little minute to have Salesforce connect. Basically, what this is doing in the back end is taking form assembly, sending that data to Salesforce, connecting to Salesforce, and bringing information back so that we can pull that information into our forms or workflow. So now that that is connected, I can start my lookups and mapping the fields I want to pull from Salesforce. So with this first one, since I want to give my customers a direct link, I'm going to map using a contact object. So I can just pull up that contact object. The lookup is going to be their contact ID equals an unsafe query parameter. And I'm going to use the parameter con ID. So that was good. I will double check my matching records. For the most part, unless you have some special conditions, matching records are perfectly fine. So I'm just going to click OK. OK up there. And then I can get started with mapping my form fields, those fields I want to pull from Salesforce into my form. So I want to pull in the account ID, which is on my Salesforce our contact record. Then I can pull in the first name, find the first name field, the last name, and then the last field for this one, or second to last field, sorry, is the email. And then for later use in my Salesforce submit connectors, I also would like to pre-fill that contact ID into my form. This way I can make sure everything is accurate from the get-go. My submit connectors are always finding that correct ID for the contact, and I can go ahead with having everything be accurate from the get-go. Now, you may have noticed I have that account name field on my form along with the account ID. I didn't map it in my contact record here because in my Salesforce, I know that account ID field in my Salesforce, even though it says the name of the account, it is actually storing it as the account ID. So to be able to show the account name on my form, I need to add an object dependent on contact and pre-fill that account record. Now with this one, the lookup's pretty easy. I can just do that account ID field equals a lookup result. And with this, I'm able to take all the fields that I looked up in that contact ID, and I can select the account ID located on that contact record. Click OK, and then map my first field, and that's going to be that account name field, and I can pull the account name from this account record. The beauty of doing it like this is no account record will be looked up and pre-filled into my form unless a contact ID was successfully found. That way, I'm not showing any like random account records if someone doesn't use the pre-filled link to access this form. It's all going to be very secure, and only that person who has that direct link is going to be able to access any of this information. So I'm going to save my form, and we can go ahead and exit out of this. I'll save my workflow. And now we can see that Salesforce Prefill connector in action. I'm going to, again, go to the publishing options, copy that pre-filled link, paste it up here, and I, again, want to mark that, hey, this is a direct link. So I'm going to use that pre-filled through the URL link and add my pre-fill connector conditions and parameters onto this. So I can use both of those methods at the same time. So we'll just add an ampersand to say, hey, there's something else come in. And then that unsafe query parameter, which basically says to the prefill connector, hey, pay attention to the data after this, equals. And then I need to get the contact ID. Let me type that in real fast. There we go. Okay. And then once I click enter, oh, I must have mistyped the contact record ID.
Those 18-character IDs can be tough to type.
Yes, sometimes they don't like it very much. Well, what is happening with this? Okay, let's just, you need to go away. Let's try this again. I think if I just do, nope, okay. We'll start back over. I didn't change anything, so that should be fine. We'll copy that workflow link again. And we'll just start over. 9, direct, ampersand, con ID. Not a plus sign. Okay, let's try this again. Zero, zero, 3, 4, X. Okay. Ignore my notes for a second. I'm going to pull the pre-filled link from here because it's looks the same, but sometimes those contact IDs don't like to work. Oh, I know what I did. this is one thing that you always need to do. I've noticed in workflow, it doesn't automatically, yep, I didn't actually enable the Prefill connector. I always forget workflow doesn't automatically enable it when you add the Prefill connector. So that's why it's not working, not because of anything wrong. There we go. Oh. Nope, I don't want that either. Paste and go. There we go. So now we see that pre-filled link right here. And now it is successfully pre-filled after I've enabled the Prefill connector. Always got to remember that enabling step. It sometimes does not like me. I always forget that one thing. And you see the actions. But this is why you test and see things and see it happening. But we have our direct pre-filled through the URL link there. And then all of our Prefill connector filling in these contact details. So now my respondents can go ahead and enter in their information for their support tickets. Now, I mentioned that we have another method of pre-filling, and that is going to be that midway form. So for my workflow, I know that with the register for webinars, my customers like to have their previously attended webinars shown to them so that they can know which upcoming webinars they need to sign up for. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the Prefill connector here, and then Prefill other connectors, and we'll select that form action, and that's going to be the register for webinars, which will give me access to the Salesforce Prefill connector. And with this connector, I'm going to be pulling information from the support ticket into the Prefill connector to pre-fill different information in this register for webinars form. Now with this one, let's go ahead and click on configure connector again. I'll select my Salesforce account. I'll also just go ahead and click enabled right from the get-go this time. So it'll work. And with this one, as we're connecting, this one, I really do love this mid Prefill connectors because you are able to use that previously submitted information to customize the data that is shown to your respondents in your workflow. So it's really kind of interactive, more so than that starting the workflow with a Salesforce Prefill connector. So now we can start configuring. And since this is my customers, my contacts that are wanting to see it, I need to think, how do I store that in my Salesforce? Well, I store my webinars as campaigns and my attendees as campaign members. So we're going to search as campaign members. And to find the specific campaign members, these are the fields I have in my Salesforce. I actually like to use the contact ID equals. And for this one, we've already looked up the contact ID in our previous connector and pulled that into the form. So we can use a workflow parameter. I'm going to use a slightly different parameter this time, so just contact. And that is the setup of the workflow parameter on this side. We'll still have some more, but we'll finish the setup for this lookup before we get back and circle back to that workflow parameter setup. So with that the conditions are good. I need to then also change my match records. For this time, I want to repeat fields because I want to pre-fill all of those webinars that they've attended in the past. So I need to repeat those fields. I'll select that. And then for the multiple record settings, I do need to map where in my form this repeatable data is being pre-filled to. So that's going to be the attended webinars. And we can do the creation date, most recent, so that they know, oh, hey, this was recent. We'll do OK. OK. And then map those fields that I want pre-filled into my form, which is pretty much just the webinar title, the campaign name, and the date of the webinar. And that is going to be the date of campaign. And we'll save this. And we'll go into and finish these workflow parameters. So when you're here on the workflow builder, under these connector properties, you can see this workflow parameter section. This is where you then need to come back to and finish that workflow parameters setup. If you do not do this, those workflow parameters will not work. So we'll just go ahead and add a parameter. We'll enter in the parameter I set in my Salesforce Prefill connector, that contact. And then for the value, I'll come in here, click the blue F, and select the field I want to pull that data from my previous form. And in this case, it's going to be that contact ID. So I'll do that, click apply, and that is ready to go. But that's not all I want to do with this Prefill connector. I also want to pull in all of the active campaigns for my webinars into this register for webinars form, so my respondents can see both webinars they've attended and future webinars. So to do that, we're going to go back into configure a connector, and we'll come back down here, and we're going to go ahead and add another lookup. Now with this one, it is not dependent on that campaign member record. So even if a customer or someone, a prospect or something, has not attended any of my webinars before, they can still open this form and see upcoming webinars. So we'll just do that campaign where I store my webinars. And with this one, it's going to be a little bit different. There's not actually going to be a parameter. Basically, all I'm doing here is, hey, any of my active campaigns are good. They can be pre-filled into this form. So I'm just going to do active equals formula. And in my Salesforce, active is a checkbox. So I just need to enter 1. And this will pull in all active campaigns from my Salesforce into this form. And since that's all of them, I need to repeat fields again. Set that to upcoming webinars, that repeatable section in my form. I'll click OK, OK. And then we can map those form fields. And for this one, we can see I do want to map that campaign ID, because I'll need that later in my Salesforce Submit connector. Then I need to do the webinar title so that my respondents can know what they're signing up for, which is the name right there. And then finally, the webinar description, which is going to be the description here. And lastly, the date and time of the webinar. So the date of the webinar is going to be the start date on my campaign. And the time of the webinar is going to be, I forget what I set it as. We'll just ignore the time, but you can set that. I think I set it as a random field rather than actually creating a custom field for that. But that's okay. So you can pre-fill all of that information from your campaign into your Salesforce, and from your Salesforce into your workflow. So we'll go ahead and save that. I'll double check that the connector is enabled this time. And then we can come back in here and save the workflow again. And I do not want to continue this form because it will not work because it's a new save. So we'll just go in here with the publish options, copy that workflow again, paste, and we'll start the workflow over from the beginning. There we go. Okay. I'll just enter in some test information to create a test case in that submit connector, and click register for upcoming webinars. So we can see all of Heidi's information is right here. We've got that direct contact, everything here. And then we can pull it into here. Now you can notice it didn't actually pull into here. We can get into why it didn't here in a second, but we can see all of the stuff that we set up in our Salesforce Prefill connector did get pre-filled. All of those webinars Heidi's attended, all of the upcoming webinars are right here, so she can know, oh, okay, hey, Mystery of the Missing Sock. I want to register for that webinar. Let me do that. And then she can do that and click submit and register for all of those webinars. Now, why exactly did her information not fill in here? I could have used the Salesforce Prefill connector again to pre-fill that information in for her. However, we have another option with pre-filling with workflow, and that's going to be our form-to-form pre-filling. So when I come in here, I have all of that information that she's already entered into the support case ticket. I can just choose to click on this register for webinars form, go to this pre-fill tab, and pre-fill all of that information she's already entered into this next form. this could save if you are worrying about API limits and stuff with your Salesforce. You can then use the form pre-filling to kind of limit those, because it's all taken care of right here in the workflow. So we can enter in account. We can select that account field from the support ticket, and we'll just go through and map all of those contact fields that we saw how were not filled in, and fill them in real fast with this form-to-form pre-filling. And you can see just how quick it is to complete this form-to-form pre-filling. I'm just clicking the fields I want to have pre-filled and then clicking the form. If I had more forms than just this one before this bullet point is the form, and then all of these are the fields within that form. So you can see pre-fill for multiple forms if you need to with the form-to-form pre-filling. If I had 5 forms prior to this form, I could pull 1 or 2 fields from all 5 forms to pre-fill into this one form. So you can really take any information you need prior in the workflow and pull it into that form that they're currently on. So we've got that form-to-form pre-filling all filled in. I'll click Save. And we can go ahead and just kind of go back and see that in process again. So we see that. I'll just enter in another test case. Let's register for upcoming webinars. Submit. And we can now see all of Heidi's information is pre-filled into the form, and all of her previously attended webinars, and everything is working in conjunction. So all 3 of those pre-filling methods are working together for this one response. We've got the pre-fill through the URL, we've got the pre-fill Salesforce connector, both opening and midway through the form, and that form-to-form pre-filling. So all of those are working together. Now you may wonder with that feedbacks form. Basically, all I would do for that one is repeat that exact same process I did for register for webinars for my customers so that they can see all of that information right there. And that is it. Let's go ahead and get into the recapping. Let me stop sharing my screen so you guys don't see the infinity loop. And we can get into that recapping. So thank you guys for sticking with me through that demo. Sometimes demos don't always go the way you want. We saw that, but that's why we test. So let's see how each of these methods can really just streamline your processes. So when you're pre-filling through the workflow URL, this method allows you to pre-fill that first form into your workflow by adding static information directly to the URL that you can then use both in that first form and throughout your entire workflow. It's not just that information that goes into that first form. You can use it anywhere in your workflow as long as you pull it in with that first form. And this can be name, email, other basic data that you can personalize to really streamline your processes. The Salesforce Prefill connector, for those of you that are using Salesforce, this connector is a game changer. It enables you to pull relevant information from Salesforce and pre-fill that into any form on your workflow, reducing that manual data entry and ensuring consistent, up-to-date data for your respondents with all of that information from Salesforce, both existing in the workflow and brand new information depending on your respondent's choices. So really versatile there. Lastly, we have the form-to-form pre-filling. Once a respondent fills out a form, you can carry over their data into subsequent forms within the same workflow. This eliminates that need for your respondent to continuously to re-enter their information over and over again, making the process quicker and more user-friendly. And as we've demonstrated, these methods not only save time and reduce errors, but also increase and improve your overall respondent experience. Pre-filling allows you to also guarantee that you're getting consistent and accurate data while helping those respondents with their completion time. And we've covered a lot today. Hopefully you now have a solid understanding of how you can implement these pre-filling strategies in your own workflows. But let's get into some questions because that was a lot of information.
It was, as usual. Take a second, grab a drink. We've gotten several questions. And thank you, as always, Joelle, for your demos. We always appreciate it. And I always learn a little bit while I watch you do your work. We had some questions that I tried to get ahead of, but I did promise the questioners that I would get their questions answered with a little more detail from you. Our first was from Mary Ann. She asks, can you use Prefill with Sales Cloud or Nonprofit Cloud, or do you have to use Experience Cloud?
It is any Salesforce connector. It's literally just connecting to your Salesforce account. And so basically, if you have those nonprofit, any Sales Cloud, Support Cloud, there's a few more that is on your Salesforce, it can connect to those because you're just basically connecting to your Salesforce, and you then have any permissions that you personally have in Salesforce, you then give to your connector so you can access anything that you have in your Salesforce.
Very cool. Nicole asks, does chatbot like Zendesk integrate with form assembly for pre-filling on applications?
Not at this time. That is a great kind of like put into feedback. You can do a little bit of it with the prefill through the URL, but it's definitely not going to be quite as dynamic as that Salesforce prefill connector. It is going to be a little bit more on the manual side. But I've definitely seen people like they create mass prefill through the URL links using like a formula in like Google Sheets where they're just like, hey, append this information to this link. And then they just set a formula and it goes through and does all of that. You can do that and create those mass links rather than going through one by one. There's ways to kind of get around it, but no, it is not kind of a native feature. You'd have to do it very manual through prefill through the URL.
Thank you. And Nicole, I did share that feedback request form. If you'd like to note Zendesk as a requested integration, we're always looking to expand our library. This question from Stephen, and it's more about workflow than it was about pre-filling. Is importing forms into workflow the same as adding a form to a new workflow?
So, okay, so it's kind of the same, but when you go to add a form to your workflow, it gives you the option to import all of those form options, like connectors, prefill connectors, emails, thank you page, all of that into your workflow. So it is the same step, but you do need to select those things that you would like to import into the workflow. So for me, I wanted to make sure my forms, they had the form, a submit connector, email, and thank you page. I wanted to import those into my workflow. So I selected those after I added the form. There's a little pop-up module that says import these settings, and I selected those to import into my form. So I didn't have to go through and manually recreate my Salesforce submit connector, manually recreate my email, manually recreate my thank you page. It's already all set for me, so I just imported it directly into my workflow.
Nice. And Stephen, this is a great example of that resource center that I pointed out. It should be in the top right corner of your screen. We have our entire workflow setup documentation linked there. So for questions like that, if you're wondering just, hey, these different workflow steps, what do I have, like what are the capabilities of workflow? That's a great place to go after this call. You can familiarize yourself and there'll be step-by-step instructions. And some pages will have video walkthroughs as well. So you'll be able to learn how to use it at your own pace. This question from Gabby, and even I was able to answer this, but I wanted to get it in front of the whole group. Can you use prefill through the URL to prefill more than one field at a time?
Yes, you definitely can. You saw when I added the Salesforce prefill connector parameters to the end of that prefill through the URL link, you'll just add an ampersand, add whatever field aliases you'd like to add, equals, and then you can use that ampersand. I've seen someone add up to 80 different fields that they prefill through the URL. Not recommended because there is a kind of like website limit across all browsers of 250 characters for that link. But I have seen people use up to 80 field aliases that they've prefilled through the URL.
Yes. The possibilities aren't quite endless, but you do have flexibility with what you can do with pre-filling through the URL. And there's information in our Help Center about that as well to help you out with that. This question from Ashley, and it's a very specific use case, and I love these kind of questions. So they ask, if I have a form field of a product, can a form populate the value of that field based on the URL of the web page. The goal here is they don't want to have to make a unique form for every product page that they have, and they don't want the visitor to have to select a product from a field containing all product options when they essentially know which product they already want. Is that possible to bring that in?
Yeah, that is definitely possible. So I'm sure your form probably already has like those conditionals set for the products and that product field. What I would recommend in that case is you can go ahead and hide that drop down of the product field, and you can use that pre-fill through the URL and just pre-fill that link. So like if you have a product of like t-shirts, jackets, vests. I'm just using random products here. But if you know, hey, these are the three ways that the three products customers can access, and they have three different ways of accessing those products, what you can do is use the pre-fill through the URL link, pull the alias for that drop-down menu, and just say alias equals vest, alias equals shirt. And you can easily do that. And then your pre-fill connector will be pre-filling that hidden drop-down menu. And then since you already have those conditionals set for each of those product sections that describe the product, you can then have that limit what that is shown to your respondents. Or if you have like other information, you can use the pre-fill through the URL to pre-fill that in. There's a variety of ways that you can show that conditional information to your different respondents based on where they access your form from. So there's a ways to do it that you can get anything that you want to be shown. That would be probably the easiest way if you have it set up that way. If you don't, you can either set it up that way, or you can pre-fill through the URL the different fields that you have for the different products. Use default values, calculations. There's ways to kind of get around to achieve whatever you'd like to have shown to your respondents using pre-fill.
Nice. Yeah, and I love those e-commerce use cases as well. Those are always really fun. This question from Dante, they note, great demo. Always great to hear some compliments live. With workflow, their question, when it goes from one form to another, are the page numbers added together? For example, if Form 1 has 2 pages and Form 2 has 3 pages, will the form that the client is completing show 5 pages, or will they just be directed to the next form with a page load? Great question, Dante.
So our page load is form specific even in workflow. I have seen customers get around this by, instead of using like our native form progress bar or like the multi-page navigation, what they do instead is just have like a little custom code that they add to the form to show where in the form they are. So like they have a custom progress bar where if they have a five-page workflow, which is really split across 3 forms in the workflow, what they'll do is have that custom code progress bar where the first form has 2 pages. So it'll just go 2 pages, and they'll go to the next form that just has 1 page. So it'll go to 3 pages, and then they'll go to the final form that has 2 pages. And that custom code will move the progress bar as they're going through the workflow. But that is a great kind of feedback, again, that we should get submitted.
Right. I do love, and Dante, I'll share that feedback request with you. We think oftentimes of workflows being these multi-step processes where there is essentially space in the middle, where we expect, an approval process to need to be done, where, it might be a multi-form application where you collect some preliminary information and then some more information. Mortgage processes are common use cases for this. But we also recognize that some people are using workflows to try to build just, conditional pathways where someone is moving through a form, and then you're, it's a choose your own adventure, and you're moving them into different forms because of that. And providing seamless pathways in workflows is a great idea, and we love that. This question, forgive me, my calendar lets me know that we're almost at the top of the hour. So I'm gonna make sure we get a couple more good questions in. This from Emilia. Can you use a date in the lookup field for the Salesforce prefill? Let's say return all records with create date of greater than or equal to the 1st of January.
Yes, that is a little bit conditional, but yes, you can. And I say it's conditional because it is, if you are storing the date in Salesforce as a text field, it is easier to use conditions like that because you can have that exact date. Part of the reason why it's a little bit harder to search for Salesforce records based on date is because Salesforce stores dates as ISO 800 or something, which means that they append it as the UTC code, the date, the month, the year, etc., and then time, hour, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. That is how Salesforce stores dates, even if it's just a date field that just says 2025-1-1. Salesforce still stores it in that ISO 800 or something format and just shows that relevant information. So you really have to kind of have a firm understanding of how Salesforce stores those dates so that when you are trying to compare a date format, you are making sure it is in the correct format and everything is pulling through. That is why sometimes if you're trying to pull through like a date and time field from Salesforce into your form using Prefill connectors, you might see like something like military time come through or a lot of extra digits in your time or something. It's because even if that's not necessarily what you see in Salesforce, Salesforce still stores that date and time as that format. Kind of similar to like when you are viewing your contact record. I mentioned that my account ID on my Salesforce contact record shows the account name, but really Salesforce stores that as the account ID on the contact record. So if I want to show the account name on my form, I have to add an additional lookup for account to pull the account name directly from the account. I can't pull it from the contact record. So things like that, where you just kind of have to understand how Salesforce stores things to be able to use them.
Fantastic. I have this question has come up a couple times. This from Nicole: with form-to-form pre-filling in workflow, where is the data stored? Is it kept longer than 7 days? And they're under the impression that, like data from form-to-form pre-filling isn't stored anywhere.
So it actually is stored in your workflow. So your workflow, even if responses are in progress, for example, with mine, let me actually just go ahead and share my screen because I can show you how it stores it, because you didn't see me submit that register a workflow webinar form. So when you go to your responses, you can see these are not completed. They are in progress. And what the workflow does is it stores that response information here. So this form has been successfully completed. All of that information is here. And I can resend this workflow response, register for webinars, to this respondent. And because this response data is stored here on the response, it will then pull in that form-to-form pre-filling from this form and pull it into this direct link. I don't think it'll show the link. No, it won't show the link, but it'll be kind of like a secure, encrypted pre-fill through the URL, essentially, with all of that information for this workflow response. So that is how workflow, even if your respondent stops, exits, and you want to send that response back later for them to continue with form-to-form pre-filling, it will still work because all of that response data is still stored on your form, and each step still looks at that previous step to consider, oh, hey, I need this information. Let me pull it from that previous step.
Great. I did have a question that I'm answering here, but Dante asked, do you have any workflow use case examples that they could get ideas from? Dante, this is a great chance for me to mention that, again, we have that resource center as a part of this webinar over in the top right-hand corner. I've got an ebook in there. It's called Turning Forms into Powerful Workflows, and it outlines some of our favorite processes. It's relatively short. I think we have like maybe 7 examples in there, but it should give you an idea of where we see some of our other customers using workflow. And that'll give you a chance as well.
Yeah. We've also done, I know that a lot of my webinars, I've also done like workflow examples. So you can see some previous webinars and see like, oh, okay, that's how I built out that workflow, and see some different examples there as well.
Nice.
But I definitely recommend the resources. Those are some cool examples of what our customers are using.
Yes. Let me grab one more question from Susan. Susan asks, if there is an issue with a response, is there a way to manually push it through using workflows?
It depends on the issue. So, um, I really like, so for mine, you saw that the Salesforce submit connector was immediately after the form. What you can do is add a thank you page or that redirect in between the form and the submit Salesforce connector, or you can even move that Salesforce submit connector to later responses, like after several forms. And then what that will then do is even if there is an error on form 1, that respondent can still continue on and that error will still occur, but the response will still go through. And then that way you can have all that information. If it is after that, if the Salesforce submit connector is directly after the form, or like if there's an error in the prefill connector, then the error does need to be either resolved by the respondent or resolved by you before that response can be submitted. It's still similar to like our forms of, hey, like our required field was missed, or hey, this is incorrect. It will still kind of give the respondents like, hey, this needs to be fixed before you can move on, kind of notification.
Fantastic. We have some additional great questions, and I'm very sorry, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to have to close off our Q&A for today. If you have questions, please do consider reaching out to our team. Our support team can get some great answers. Also, as Joelle mentioned, we have done so many webinars specifically on workflow and some of these use cases. I'd encourage you to visit formassembly.com, hop into the resources tab of our website, and peruse some of our webinars. You'll find some great content in there, especially if you like learning from Joelle, because she's on a ton of those webinars. There's some great resources there that you'll be able to benefit from. Before I let you go today, workflow is not available on every form assembly plan, and I know most of you are current customers. If you would like to get a customized demo out of our sales team, they can show you the power of some of the other plans that we have inside of the form assembly family of products. If you click, I want to make it super easy for you. If you want a customized demo, if you want to meet with the sales team, if you click the yes, I'll make sure a sales team member follows up with you sometime over the next couple of hours to make sure that they can schedule a demo with you. I know that time is at a premium around the holidays, so they'll work with your schedule, but I'd love to get you demos if you want them. And if you're trying to click, but I'm about to change the slide, so if you can't answer, go ahead and go to formassembly.com. If you just schedule a demo, they'll be able to show you. Just mention when they're setting up your demo call, just mention that you want to see a workflow demo in particular, and they'll make sure you're set up there. A last quick call out that, hey, we've got some resources for you. If you're looking for use case ideas around workflow, check out that Turning Forms into Powerful Workflows ebook. You can click straight to our resources center from there. We also have documentation around workflow available to you in our help center to give you that step-by-step process. I'm losing my thread at the end of the hour. If you need help, our help center is a great place to go look for it. The last thing I want to make sure of is that you all have a chance to register for our VIP coffee with a subject matter expert that's taking place just next week. Normally, these are exclusive to our VIP program, but we're opening it up as the last coffee session of the year. We want to give you a chance to see how, they're a little bit different from our webinars. We get a little bit more, intimate. You can chat with other attendees if you're interested in learning a little bit more. And Joelle, remind me, what's the topic of the session next week?
So the topic one, this is very much shows how informal it is. It is basically just taking Santa's list. We're going to pre-fill repeatable records from Salesforce for Santa so he can check his list twice, check who's naughty and nice, and then make sure that form is also secure so only Santa can access it and nobody else can check to see where they are on Santa's list.
Nice. So pour yourself a cup of holiday cheer and join us for a holiday-themed coffee with an SME session next week, and use that registration link. We'd love to see you there. Joelle, thank you as always. Really appreciate the work you put into these webinars, and audience, appreciate your attendance. You're why we do these. Keep on coming. Keep the questions coming. We'll keep the educational sessions coming next year, because this is the last one that we're doing this year. So thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a great, happy holidays and a great new year.
Yes, yes. Happy holidays and happy new year. We'll see you around the bend.